Hello, I'm Jake. I had never experienced anything like this before. I always thought that camping and being surrounded by nature was a peaceful thing. But after that day, I learned how dark and terrifying the forest could be. How about you? Have you ever thought a place was truly abandoned, only to realize that it wasn't abandoned but cursed instead? If your answer is yes, then listen carefully to this story, because this event could change your life forever. My channel is so close to reaching 500 subscribers. If you haven't subscribed yet, it's completely free and would mean a lot if you supported me. Let me know in the comments if you subscribed. I'll be dropping a heart on those comments. And don't forget to share this video. Attention! I share horror stories every day at 1500 hours PM. One weekend, 4 of my friends and I decided to go to a lost campsite a little outside our town. It was said that there was a hidden area deep in an old forest, forgotten by everyone. Only a few old maps and stories existed, but our goal was to explore the richness and serenity of nature, an escape from our world. When we arrived at the campsite, the air was hazy. Traces of a lost past still lingered deep in the forest. The old yellowed leaves on the ground and the bent trees showed that this had once been a settlement. However, there was something that indicated that something had kept people from coming here. No one wanted to come here. As we set up our tents, we all felt something was off, but we said nothing. We just took advantage of the warm daylight and started a fire. When night fell, the air suddenly turned cold. The wind howled, echoing through the rustling trees. Then, suddenly, I heard a sound. It was really strange. It sounded like a child crying. It came from a place miles away from us. Everyone was silent. Strangely, the sound suddenly stopped, and then it was replaced by a laugh. But this laugh wasn't like any we'd ever heard. It was so high-pitched that it scratched our ears. We looked at each other in silence, speaking quietly. We nervously made eye contact, but no one said anything. We didn't know what to do. We decided to spend the night, but somehow, everything felt different. We all felt a kind of unease. Instead of staying around the fire, we retreated to our tents. That morning, something strange happened. As we stepped outside the tents, the ground was completely different. Everything had shifted. The trees, the rocks, and most importantly, old stones with strange symbols on them. None of what we saw was normal. On the old stones, there used to be an inscription. Slowly, trying to understand, I read it. If you stay here one night, you will have taken a step you can never return from. A few of my friends didn't take the writing seriously, but I felt a deep sense of fear inside me. At that moment, I thought we should head back to town. We all decided to pack up the camp, but just then, something strange happened. We turned around and saw something coming toward us from the deep forest. A human silhouette quickly approached and sat on one of the stones by the river. We took our eyes off it for just a moment, but the silhouette never disappeared. We panicked, grabbed our tents, and had to leave. But there was still something there. It felt like a shadow was following us. Something was watching us. As we walked back to town, with every step, we felt like something from that forest was with us. That dark, never-ending presence. Since that day, I never visited that forest again. At night, I still hear those strange laughs, that child's cry, and the watching shadows. We will never know what happened in that forest. But what I do know is that sometimes, the places that are lost are just the beginning of an invisible fear. If this story has affected you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because in the dark corners of nature, there is always a hidden fear. Have you ever felt like something was watching you? Or realized that a place, which seemed peaceful at first, was actually hiding a dark secret that pulled you in? If your answer is yes, then this story will deeply affect you. Because sometimes, the safest looking places hide the greatest dangers. My name is Luke, And this story is about the most terrifying camping experience I ever had with my friends. That day, nature was as calm as usual. But that night, the forest had a surprise waiting for us. It all began on a Saturday morning. My friends Emma, Jack, Ben, and I decided to visit an abandoned campsite said to be outside our town. The campsite was rumored to be in ruins, but we were still drawn to it for an adventurous experience. As usual, we were a bit excited, but we had no idea it would be this terrifying. When we arrived at the campsite, everything was unusually quiet. The wind between the trees was barely audible. As we set up our tents, we noticed some old stones and broken wood, but they seemed like nothing more than traces of a long-abandoned place. We didn't think anything was wrong. As dusk approached, we gathered around the fire and opened some beers. We were chatting, laughing, and thought we'd pass the night easily. But then something happened. As the night wore on, there was a strange heaviness in the air. Everything seemed a bit more oppressive. Emma said, "This doesn't feel normal," but we didn't pay much attention. Our tired eyes led us to believe the night would go by without any problems. Then suddenly, we saw a faint movement in the bushes. Shortly after, we heard a sharp and broken sound from afar. At first, it sounded like a foreign song, but something felt wrong because it was repeating itself. It was as if someone was singing it, but the voice was almost inaudible, distant. Jack said, "There's something there." His face turned pale. We turned around, but saw no one. However, as we looked around, we noticed that everything around our tents seemed slightly faded and blurry. The shadows around the fire had grown strangely large, and the trees appeared even more frightening. After a while, we decided to go outside and check it out. We all walked towards the strange sound. Soon, we came to a clearing. There, in the darkness, was the silhouette of a stone structure, almost lost to the night. It looked like some sort of ancient temple, but it was severely damaged. The stones around the structure were completely covered in moss. Emma said, "This place is really weird," but something inside us was pulling us toward it. With every step, the darkness seemed to grow. Just then, something moved inside the structure. We all stopped, holding our breath, watching carefully. A figure was emerging, but it was too faint and blurry. It was almost ghost-like, and with each passing second, it became clearer. The figure walked toward us but disappeared into the darkness without saying a word. Suddenly, a violent gust of wind blew through. The tents were shaking, and everything seemed as though it would collapse on us. In a state of panic, we decided to head back, but when we reached our campsite, we encountered something we hadn't expected. Shadowy figures were standing around our tents. They felt as real as if they were truly there. In that moment, we realized we needed to get out of there as quickly as possible. We gathered our things in a hurry and started heading deeper into the forest. But with every step, we could hear the footsteps of someone who had gone before us. After entering the forest, we found ourselves in a deep silence like we'd never heard before. The sharpness of the air made every one of our steps echo loudly in our ears. As we made our way back to town, we still felt as though something was following us from the depths of the forest. From that moment on, we never returned to that forest. The temple, the figure, and that terrifying sensation still linger in my mind. If this story has affected you and you'd like to hear more chilling tales, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Because nature isn't always peaceful, sometimes the darkness left behind is waiting for you at every turn. As we headed toward the campsite where we would spend the night, none of us knew that this would be the beginning of the end. We all wanted to spend an ordinary weekend, enjoy nature, and escape the noise of town life. But that night, something changed. Have you ever thought that nothing is ever quite as it seems? That a place holds hidden fears just a step away? This story will show you just how close the horrors buried deep in a place can be. My name is Alex, and this is the unforgettable story of what happened to us. It all started when we decided to explore an abandoned campsite just outside our town. I was with a group of friends: Sarah, Ben, Ethan, and Lily. Neither of us had much experience with camping, but we were seeking adventure. The excitement in our eyes and the pure sense of freedom in our minds pushed us a little further. When we arrived at the campsite, everything seemed normal at first, but there was something odd. The trees surrounding us seemed to be darker, as if the light had dimmed slightly. As we set up our tents, we heard a strange hum coming from the rocks by the river. At first, we thought it was the wind, but the sound didn't stop. If I drop a pebble right now, you'd definitely hear it, because the silence is so deep, Ethan had said. As the night slowly descended, we gathered around the fire and started telling each other stories. But with every passing minute, the darkness crept in, and everything grew more mysterious. Suddenly, Sarah stopped and tilted her head. "Do you hear that?" she asked. We all fell silent, but the only sound echoing in our ears was the gentle flow of the river. "I think it's just the wind," Ben mumbled, but even his voice sounded strained. By midnight, everyone was wide awake. We kept glancing at each other, but no one spoke. It felt like something was there, but no one had the courage to say it out loud. As the uneasy silence stretched on, we all started to doze off, one by one. Then, suddenly, a piercing scream echoed through the night. We all woke up, but there was no one outside. The only sounds we could hear were the wind and the rustling of the trees. In fear, I decided to go outside and immediately woke up the others. We huddled together, cautiously stepping forward, and noticed a few ancient inscriptions on the rocks outside our campsite. They were meaningful yet terrifying. "Don't stay here, don't spend the night," read part of the inscriptions, but another word had been added: "Those who stay the night vanish." We quickly left the area around the inscriptions, but we had the unsettling feeling that something was following us. As the air grew colder, the darkness thickened. And then, a figure appeared. Unlike the others, this one was so silent that we couldn't even hear its footsteps. It locked eyes with us, but its face was indistinct. It was like a ghost. In panic, we ran back to the campsite, but our tents were no longer there. Everything had been overturned and scattered. The terror in our minds mixed with the pounding of our hearts, and we immediately began to pack our things. On a stone by the river was another inscription: "Don't leave, or you'll be lost forever." We found ourselves heading toward the town, but with every step, that figure followed us, its sounds echoing from the depths of the forest. Although we didn't turn around, we could feel it still with us, silently watching. We reached the edge of the forest and ran into the town, but the figure was still there in the darkness, following us. Since that night, I've never returned to that forest. But I always feel like something is watching us. The words on those stones still echo in my mind. There's always something following us. And I'll never forget that night. If this story affected you and you want to hear more chilling content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Because sometimes, the dark knocks on your door when you least expect it. Sometimes, fear isn't about knowing something is watching you, but about not knowing what is following you. Have you ever wondered if a place is truly abandoned? And if it is, what dark secrets might it still hold? What happened to us was an attempt to answer just that question. If you've been watching this far and haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure to hit the subscribe button. My name is Lucas, and this is the story of a terrifying night I spent with 4 of my friends. We decided to go to a remote, abandoned campground, far from the town, for a weekend getaway. Together with Sarah, Brian, Emily, and Leo, we wanted to escape everything and spend a few days alone in nature. When we arrived at the campsite, I had no doubt that it was truly abandoned. We set up our tents and, thinking we'd spend the evening around the fire, we took a deep breath. Everything was perfect, until that moment. But something was off. Later in the evening, strange shadows began appearing around the campsite. Whenever someone was outside, something was moving between the tents. Leo asked, "Did you guys see that?" We all turned, but there was nothing there. Then, something changed in the air. It felt as though everything had suddenly become heavier. A strange hum, like a drunken wind, reached our ears. Sarah said, "This isn't right," but no one understood exactly what she meant. Throughout the night, a sense of lostness started to emerge around the campsite. Everything around us seemed to be echoes of a forgotten past. Morning came, but the strangeness didn't end. Despite the daylight, I realized I hadn't slept a wink that night. We couldn't figure out where the source of the fear was coming from. Leo said, "Let's go explore a bit." We all agreed. Slowly, we left the campsite and ventured deeper into the forest. Along the way, we saw strange, old stones and broken structures. Had we consulted a local expert, they might have told us those stones were part of an ancient temple area used by the local people. But we were too focused on our adventure. Then, we found a hidden trail in the heart of the forest. As we walked down it, we spotted an old wooden structure. It looked like a small cabin, but it had clearly been abandoned for many years. The door was slightly ajar. We decided to go inside. Once inside, a heavy silence greeted us. But something was there. It felt like the traces of someone who had once lived there were still lingering. I noticed an old inscription painted on the wall. "Those who stay here will be lost in the endless darkness of the night." We slowly backed away, but in that moment, something felt wrong, like there was something in that cabin, but we couldn't tell what. We decided to leave, but something changed right then. The moment I took a step, everything stopped being normal. The air grew colder, and we realized night had fallen again. Everyone suddenly felt a chill, but no one said anything. It felt like something had shifted. When we returned to our tents to spend the night, everything was different. Our tents were gone, but there were clear signs that someone had been there. The ground was marked with strange symbols. "Something's wrong," Emily said, her voice trembling. Suddenly, a figure appeared around the fire, rubbing its hands together. It moved silently among us like a ghost. Its eyes were hollow, watching us. Sarah screamed, but our voices were lost. As the figure took a step, we couldn't move. Slowly, it disappeared behind us. Everything turned dark. Throughout the night, we could hear an unrelenting whisper coming from the depths of the forest. It felt as though something was whispering in our ears. We had no choice but to run back to the town. But with every step, we could still hear that figure's voice coming from the forest. When we finally reached safety and felt secure, the whispering abruptly stopped. That night, however, remained a nightmare forever etched in our minds. That figure, the cabin, the forgotten inscription, each one left a deep mark on us. From that day on, we never set foot in the depths of that forest again. Sometimes, with every step I take, I still feel that fear. If this story affected you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because sometimes, something hidden in the darkness reaches out to us, touching us but remaining unseen.